look, honestly, it's kind of a nothing news day, but you know what? Go ahead and drop it. Welcome, it's Friday and thus a power panel and a Kasparian. Francesca is here as well and I'm Iadarola. Cenk isn't here, something birthday.
Yeah,
he has them.
He has a day off to actually rest and relax and enjoy his birthday, and he is doing the exact opposite. He's on Twitter, he's making business calls.
He's probably doing a live video right now.
He's birthdaying incorrectly.
That's like as bad as going on like a trip to Italy and tweeting from your trip to Italy on Twitter.
Well, I think he's doing a staycation, but he has earned some sort of overseas trip. Every year he does try to go to somewhere around the country, though.
And he stays on Twitter, I'm sure.
Possibly. Certainly live video.
Well, he's
YouTube Live has not been good
this
for him.
Big nothing burger, just a empty, like pattyless. There's no bun. There's nothing. It's just, it's a burger. It's really good. It's a good. It's like the Impossible Burger.
Hey, that's actually good.
Have you guys tried that yet?
I have.
I have.
Anyway, we're gonna talk about burgers later. Don't worry, if you want more burger talk, you've come to the right place. #1 burger podcast on iTunes right now. Rate it 5 burgers and leave a burger-related review. And then we'll also talk about other things. So we're gonna be talking about the DCCC's. Yes, that's true. The DCCC's plan to make it more difficult for primaries to ever take down a Democratic incumbent. We'll be talking about that. There are new sanctions on North Korea. Theoretically or briefly, we will break that down. AOC is being targeted by death threats. We're going to identify why that is. And Laura Ingraham decides to try to take down a progressive journalist, possibly exposing her to multiple death threats as well. So should be a lot of fun throughout the day. Yeah. So why don't we start off with a little an appetizer story. Today, right at 5 p.m. Eastern time, Robert Mueller delivered his finished report and proved conclusively that, I don't know, we don't really know anything that's in it yet, honestly. So it came out like an hour and 20 minutes ago or so that the report's gonna be released. It's gonna be handed over to William Barr. Okay, that's great. I mean, we're gonna report on it or whatever, but we won't know anytime soon what's actually in it. Now, I will reveal to you all that we do know, which I mostly just did. But William Barr also had a letter revealing how this thing is going to play out in the future. So we have a section of it. Read it if you can. In part, it says in the middle, I am reviewing the report and anticipate that I may be in a position to advise you on the special counsel's principal conclusions as soon as this weekend. Separately, I intend to consult with Deputy Attorney General Rosenstein and Special Counsel Mueller to determine what other information from the report can be released to Congress and the public consistent with the law, including Special Counsel regulations and the department's longstanding practices and policies, which will be interpreted however they want. I remain committed to as much transparency as possible, and I will keep you informed to the status of my review. So, he is saying that we might get the thesis statement this weekend, and then we'll see about the rest of it. I mean,
the nut graph.
Exactly.
It's always the best part.
Yeah, so the House voted unanimously that it should be released,
right.
Obviously. The vast majority of the population thinks, of course we should know what they found in this investigation. Only Trump's most ardent defenders and base don't want it to come out. And so we might get those details, but we might not, because William Barr, there's every reason to believe he was put there because he is willing to block the full release of the report.
Right.
So we don't know, of course, what the report says, and I hate these nonstop, lengthy conversations that you see in cable news where there's nothing more than speculation about what the report says. So I don't want to fall into that trap, and I don't even think that conversation is interesting.
Well, I do want to do a top 10 list of things that might be in it. I'm kidding, I don't.
But I will say, something happened yesterday that I found hilarious, and I just wanted to make sure that it's on everyone else's radar. So I get home from work, I'm ready to relax. The last thing I want to do is think about news or Trump or anything like that. But I get notifications from some people on Twitter, including Cenk. And Cenk had tweeted a story about how Trump, instead of saying hi to reporters, just greeted them with no collusion, and walked away.
No collusion.
And I just thought that was so funny, because it's like someone walking into a room and saying, I didn't steal the $100. I was not the person who stole the $100, right? You automatically assume that's the person who stole the $100. Like, he self-incriminates. It's amazing.
Yeah, I was saying that it's like you're your partner walking into the bedroom and going, no adultery, no adultery. You're like, it's great, babe.
Yeah.
Anyway.
A pilot gets on the plane, no whiskey, no whiskey. It's like, that's great. Maybe too soon.
We're gonna get broad strokes, and then this weekend it seems.
At best, broad strokes.
And then we'll sort of know what else is in it. I mean, I think that no matter where you stand on all this, I mean, we have to know, right, what it contains. I'm worried that it will be inconclusive. I think that's my biggest worry. My biggest fear is that it'll be. I don't know if there'll be recommendations that I think might be an overstep of what I guess the special prosecutor is supposed to do.
Yeah, I don't know that there would be.
But I'm afraid that it'll be like, and and what else, it seems like everything's been circling, and we sort of know like all the many threads of investigation. So I'm wondering how either if it all gets braided together or if it just kind of poof, is.
Yeah, well, my fear is that this is an investigation that was limited in scope. It focused primarily on the Russia question, whether there was collusion between Russia and the campaign. And so Trump is facing investigations for a wide variety of issues that I would argue are way more problematic, right? So possible money laundering, some of his tax scams that took place, the fact that he allegedly used his own charitable foundation to enrich himself, the fact that he might have committed fraud when it came to obtaining loans from Deutsche Bank by inflating what his assets were worth, and then he would deflate his assets for tax purposes. So all of these things I think are far more interesting. His conflicts of interest, whether or not he's using the office of the presidency for his own financial benefits as opposed to representing the best interests of the American people. Like all of those things he's being looked into for, but everyone likes to conflate all of the investigations as if it's one thing. It's just the collusion thing. No, it's not just collusion. And I'm afraid that if Robert Mueller's report comes out and it's just inconclusive or it's weak sauce, as I've said earlier this week, then everyone is just gonna dismiss every other thing that he's being investigated for. And that's what worries me.
Well, look, I think a significant portion of the country, for various different reasons, doesn't care what's actually in it. They've already made up their mind possibly a year and a half ago. I am a progressive, and because of that, I believe in holding the wealthy and powerful accountable if they've committed crimes. And so whether it's in Robert Mueller's investigation or other investigations being conducted by the Southern District of New York or whatever, I wanna know the truth of what's actually happening, and we've been very consistent on that. But what's interesting about this is that he was appointed to the position, Robert Mueller, like 677 days ago. It's been forever.
And they've been counting.
And they have, yeah, exactly. No, I just saw it on Twitter. Anyway, and he hasn't really leaked much, and yet we have found out a lot, not through his office, but through others. And what's so interesting is if he had been appointed and we had learned nothing, we just had the information we had on election day 2016, 6 months goes by, and then he comes out with a few of the little things that we've learned since then, it would have been big. Like if we'd found out, we never would have imagined that Don Jr. would be told that the Russian government wants to get his father elected, and so they're gonna meet up to give him dirt, and he'd say, I love it. That would have been amazing, but we learned about that like a year ago, so everybody's just like, oh, that's old stuff, who cares anymore?
Right.
And so there's a lot of examples like that, where so much stuff has been sort of dribbled out, everything gets normalized, and we don't care anymore about what's really going on.
I mean, I think, okay, here's why I think it matters. I mean, Anna, you're totally right. It's all these other instances of illegality that have been proven throughout, all the many interviews and the people who've pled guilty, et cetera, that have nothing to do with the Russian collusion. The thing that fascinates me, though, is that the Russia story is a perfect distillation of all of the ways that he's been scamming people financially, politically, for decades. And it's like, it all comes to this like, oh, you continued to build a tower, wanting to plans to build the Trump Tower in Moscow right after you started your campaign. Right after. So it was a deliberate conflating of like a conflict of interest. It's like, no, you walked into that conflict of interest because, as Michael Cohen said, like, you didn't think you'd be elected. And I think the ways that this all is like the cornucopia of corruption, I find really amazing because, trying to hold the powerful and rich accountable and these goons accountable, it's like, you thought you could get away with sort of the biggest scandal of them all, and we'll see if you do.
Yeah. Anyway, beyond that, we have no idea what's in it. It's possible we'll find out, we'll wake up tomorrow morning, to a notification, or maybe it's breaking right now. I'm not literally on my phone, I'm glancing at it, but maybe it's coming out right now. Anyway, we don't know, so there's no reason to go on for a long time. We are gonna wait and find out what happens and then evaluate based on that. I wish that was a more popular position that people were gonna take for this.
I'm pretty sure our audience finds that to be a popular position.
Oh, definitely, I think that's why they watch the show.
Yeah.
I think. Okay, well, let's move on to a topic we have more information on that has to do with the DCCC. The DCCC, that's the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, has released a set of new hiring standards, they call them, which are intended to blah, blah, blah. They have a big explanation about it. But what they're intended to do is make it so that primary opponents to incumbent Democratic congressmen or congresswomen have less of a chance of actually succeeding. And the way they want to do that is to sort of cut off access to a number of different contractors who work in various elements of campaigns. So I want to read just a couple of paragraphs from their new standards. So they say, to apply to become a preferred vendor in the 2020 cycle, firms must agree to a set of standards that includes agreeing not to work with anyone challenging an incumbent. Yay, democracy. Once you get in, you never get out. So, and then they say, and this is what you have to agree to get that preferred status. I understand the above statement that the DCCC will not conduct business with nor recommend to any of its targeted campaigns any consultant that works with an opponent of a sitting member of the House Democratic Caucus. And so, look, there's a lot of different consequences. Obviously, they're not happy with some of those who won primaries this last time around. I would say that there's nothing more self-sabotaging than wishing that AOC and Ayanna Pressley and Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib and a number of others had not run successful campaigns, either primarying incumbents or running as Democrats and moving the party in the direction it needs to go. That's the reason the Democratic Party in the House is exciting right now and is actually doing something.
It is.
Imagine if you didn't have those names, where we'd be right now, all else being equal. But the DCCC sees the current landscape and says, I want more boring candidates. I don't want them to question the status quo, whether it comes to past foreign policy in Latin America or taxation or the Green New Deal.
This move is undemocratic. And it also shows you the disgusting level of entitlement the members of the House have right now, the Democratic members of the House, to the point where they do not want anyone to challenge what they believe they're entitled to. Everyone can be replaced. Everyone should be held to the same standard, and everyone should do their best to represent the people who elected them. If you don't do that, you absolutely should face a primary challenge, and that's what happened here. And you're right, John. I mean, what was the Democratic Party prior to these freshman Democrats coming in and actually shaking things up and forcing the Democratic Party to pay attention to the will of the people, what individuals voting for them really want. And that includes economic justice. That includes doing something about the environment and climate change. That includes doing something about college affordability and housing affordability and labor rights. I mean, these are issues that Democratic incumbents pretended to care about. They love to exploit those issues when they're campaigning for their reelection, but they certainly never put action behind those words. And now all of a sudden you have lawmakers who do want to put action behind those words, and they're staying true to what they campaigned for, and it is exciting. It makes me sick to see how entitled these people are.
They would have had Biden. They still have Biden. Hey, old Joe. What's wrong with Joe Biden? He's hip. He looks good in hoops.
And red lipstick.
I don't totally understand how this works. What does it mean that a firm will be cut off from?
That they won't be working with them, which makes it theoretically harder for these contractors to maintain their business. If they're not able to work in some of the most the most contentious campaigns are going to have the most money spent in them, then they might not exist in the future. And so it is telling them, if you choose to work in one campaign with someone who's primarying Joe Crowley or whatever, then you will not get to work on these other campaigns. And so you will not, as a business, you won't be able to afford to work with them.
Right.
And it has interesting consequences too.
No DCCC money will come to you.
That is the implication, yes. And so let's talk about some of the consequences that perhaps they didn't know about, or perhaps they didn't, they thought it was worth it anyway. So this is from Kayla Lacey at The Intercept, who says, strategists and congressional staffers with knowledge of the change say it will disproportionately impact vendors and candidates who are women and people of color, as the consultants who work with incumbents are the ones who've come up through the party at a time when its commitment to diversity was even dimmer than it is today.
Right.
So if you are a part of the old boys club, then you already have the in on all of these consultants. If you're trying to, for instance, be one of the younger, dynamic, more technologically savvy contractors who are working with some of the newest representatives, you might not look like the ones who are working with, for instance, Joe Biden or Joe Crowley or whoever. And so, while I mentioned a number of different names that are helping drive enthusiasm for the Democratic Party, the clearest example of this would have to be AOC, because not only did she win a primary, but she won a primary against exactly the sort of person who represents the DCCC way of running things in Joe Crowley. And Alexandria Rojas, executive director of Justice Democrats, obviously has a vested interest in AOC, said, make no mistake, they're sending a signal that they're more afraid of people like Ayanna Pressley and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez winning primary challenges than Henry Cuellar, who is the first that's going to receive one, who votes with Trump nearly 70% of the time. And look, this is intended to drive people out from actually participating from starting candidacies that are going to primary people. It's going to make it less likely that they succeed in the past, while also being so cowardly and craven that it's such a hands-off way of doing it. We're going to set these standards now, and in a year or 5 years or 10 years, you might find it harder for you to get the people you need to run your campaign. But at that point, I mean, those are old rules. I mean, what do we really have to do with it? We're not saying we're anti-democracy. We're not saying we just want to protect incumbents. But that's
in the name of the party, y'all. Democratic Party. I feel like they don't know how to be polyamorous. The DCCC, it's like, they're like, see, think about it. It's like a relationship where you're like, yeah, babe, I support you. Whatever you want to do, you can date people you want. Just no one who's attractive. No one who wants like $15 minimum wage or tuition-free college. They just no one who's cuter than me. Joe Biden.
They just don't want to change the way they've been doing things. They hate the fact that they've been called out on the corruption. They hate the fact that they've been called out on corporate donors and how they've really listened to corporate donors more than the individuals who voted for them and got them elected into office. And so, look, remember, all of these freshman Democrats are in the room. Think about what this signals to them and think about what this says to them. Over and over again, they're being told, maybe not in the most overt way, but they are being told, hey, the old guard doesn't like you, and we want to prevent more of you.
Yeah.
And then also secretly that they are more, I mean, that quote you read earlier from the head of the Justice Democrats. Alexandria Ross. Basically means that, or Rojas, excuse me, there you go. That's like, you're also more afraid of new progressive Democrats than you are of Republicans.
Totally.
Than you are of Trump.
They've been more aggressive toward these freshman Democrats than they have against Trump. I mean, Nancy Pelosi earlier says that she doesn't want to impeach Trump, doesn't even want to really have a conversation about it. Right. And individuals in a private Twitter group on Pelosi's Twitter account were told, hey, if you don't like that we're not going to impeach, then you can leave this group. Basically, you guys are influencers that we included in this group to help spread a positive message about us. But if you disagree with anything we're doing, then you can buzz off.
Yeah, exactly.
It's disgusting.
AOC asked the same question, answered, of course I want to impeach him. It's very easy to be strong, it turns out, when you don't have the donors that some of these people have. And the thing is, the DCCC isn't just scared of what happened in the primary season in 2018. What they're scared of is what's going to happen, because what you had in 2018 was the result of a couple of organizations like Our Revolution, Justice Democrats, a few others, starting up from nothing and finding these amazing candidates and notching far more wins than they would have been given credit for literally the day before the election. But now so many people around the country know that it's possible, and they know that they can raise money, small donors, the way that the AOC and others did, and they can run on their values. And so what you saw in 2018 is just, that's a small little taste of what's gonna happen in future elections. DCCC, as corrupt as they are, is smart enough to know that that's probably coming, and so they wanna stop that. Whereas on our side, we think, thank God there are people like this, awesome progressives running as Democrats and helping to shift where the party's at. Now, there's literally no one who is more of an expert on this process right now, I think, than AOC. So I wanna read just a few of the things that she posted online after this story came out. She said, when I ran, the existing Dem tech was so obsolete that we developed our own canvassing app. It was so good, it spun off into its own startup, which she linked to, Reach.vote. It's a shame that innovative technologies proven to work at winning elections won't be used by our party, because after all, that group probably will not make it past these new regulations from the DCCC. And also, in terms of the messaging that the DCCC is using, they want to convince you that it's too risky to run these primaries. After all, you're gonna end up losing a bunch of close congressional elections, as if all of the places where these primaries are happening are close elections in the first place. Many of them, including in AOC's district, were never a question once you got to the general election. It was always going to be the Democrat. So pretending that there's some big risk that you should be scared about in the primary is 100% intellectually disingenuous. And she understands that and says the majority of Americans live in safe districts where general election isn't competitive. By stymieing primaries, you deny most voters their best chance at choosing their representative. We also deny the party the opportunity of training up a future bench, something we badly need. And that is 100% true. She goes on to talk about the influence of big donors, and obviously that is who is being protected here as well.
Do we need the DCCC?
Well, I love that you're bringing that up, because what they're trying to do is make future primary contenders irrelevant, but what they're doing is hastening their own irrelevance.
Right.
It's not like all the big organizations like for instance, Act Blue and things like that, these new ways of raising money, all of that, they're not gonna abide by this, so they're gonna tell the DCCC to piss off. That's what they're gonna say.
Right.
And instead, you're gonna see an actual evolution in terms of technology, a democratization of access to tools that allow someone to run a successful campaign. So I agree, I think that this is gonna hurt them more than it hurts the future progressives.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, we are gonna take our first break though. When we come back, lots more to get to.
We hope you're enjoying this free clip from the Young Turks. If you want to get the whole show and more exclusive content while supporting independent media, become a member at tyt.com/join today. In the meantime, enjoy this free segment.
Welcome back to the show, everyone. Before we jump back into the news, and we've got some fun ones coming up, I did want to give you just an early heads up that next Wednesday, the 27th of March, starting at 6:30 a.m. Pacific time. Geez. Yeah, I'm gonna be there. 6:30.
That's
Sorry,
you.
Felix Sater testimony special. 6:30. I will be there. I think with Cenk Uygur at again 6:30 to start the coverage of that, and it'll go however long it is.
Probably all day.
Look, honestly, these congressional hearings have been some of the most exciting television so far this year. So we'll see if this one holds up as well. But again, that's the 27th, and we will be broadcasting our reactions live. tyt.com/live, tracking the things you're saying. If you want to ask questions and stuff like that, it's a fun little collaborative thing.
I'll be there at 10. So if you want to hear like cogent thoughts.
Oh, awesome. Or skip that, watch the damn report live. Speaking of which, no, there were some comments. So Organic Panic said, wahoo, Francesca. That's fun. Let's see, Darren says that the B Room, I'm not gonna say the full thing, I don't wanna get in trouble.
I think you can say it,
And
though.
The Damage Report are two of the best podcasts available in the iTunes store or wherever podcasts are found. The only thing I would add is that obviously No Filter also one of the best podcasts available.
But you don't have to add that for the
add it.
And also Shut Up and Sit Down if you listen to
The
that.
Bitchuation Room podcast, you can say that. Also, this is No
they got that
Filter.
fast.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see.
See, I don't burn documents on my podcast, though.
I only burn talking points because I ain't got no interest in that.
You burn down right-wing pundits too.
Yeah.
I put them in the trash. Okay, so we've also got some, let's see, these are TRT Lives. Eclectic Miscellaneous says DCCC equals dialing constantly for corporate cash.
Totally.
I like that, that's good. Notorious Lid said, Anna, John, and Fran is the ultimate power panel. Cannot get enough of Francesca's sassy brilliance. Bring me the news, beautiful people. Well, that's very positive. And Marty
got
209
weird, but that's cool.
says DCCC just outed themselves as old school corporatist garbage. It's a good thing, purge the system. I mean, I agree with the sentiment, but I don't think they just did it.
They keep doing
It was
it.
a while ago.
Yeah.
But yes, they have done it again in a very easy to track way. And thankfully, Intercept had a great write-up about that, so it did not slide by unnoticed by a lot of people. Okay, with that, let's jump back in the news. Last night, new sanctions were announced by the Commerce Department, sort of, and just briefly. The US Department of the Treasury's Office of Foreign Assets Control today announced the designation of 2 shipping companies in China that have helped North Korea evade sanctions. So both of those companies are Chinese companies, but what they were doing was providing a way for North Korea to get around certain sanctions. And so Steve Mnuchin at the time, this is yesterday, remember, said the United States and our like-minded partners remain committed to achieving the final, fully verified denuclearization of North Korea and believe that the full implementation of North Korea-related UN Security Council resolutions is crucial to a successful outcome. Treasury will continue to enforce our sanctions, and we are making it explicitly clear that shipping companies employing deceptive tactics to mask illicit trade with North Korea expose themselves to great risk. So what he's saying there is, if we want to get to denuclearization, they cannot be getting around our sanctions. And they're doing that right now. And they made clear how it works, actually. If we can bring up this map, you're gonna see North Korea ship-to-ship transfer areas. So little areas out at sea where North Korean vessels were able to dock up with Chinese vessels and thus transfer things, either things that North Korea wants to sell or potentially things that they want to get, including technology. And if you want denuclearization to happen, that isn't gonna work as long as that's going on. If we come up next, you're gonna see that then those same ships go to all these different ports. From the point of view of Steve Mnuchin, a person who I don't generally trust, it's a disaster, that's what he's saying. And yeah, I mean, look, if you bring up this next one, you're gonna see John Bolton, super enthusiastic. We have to do it if we don't want North Korea to have nuclear weapons. And then this morning came.
I love how they tweet because they know their boss. That's the only way to talk to their boss. Like that's why Bolton is tweeting that because he's like,
he can't get through on the phone.
You know, hey, exactly, and
he's
he
like
couldn't
Don
get through
Jr.
to. Yes, and he couldn't get through to Fox and Friends, so he just took to Twitter, and that's how he gets the meeting with his president.
Well, he didn't get a meeting, but he did get a response because Donald Trump apparently learned from all this online activity that the sanctions had been announced. And so this morning he said it was announced today by the US Treasury that additional large-scale sanctions would be added to those already existing sanctions on North Korea. I have today ordered the withdrawal of those additional sanctions. So they were not long for the world. They existed for 9 hours, maybe 12, I'm not sure, but they've been taken away. And when Sarah Huckabee Sanders was asked about it, she said that Donald Trump likes Chairman Kim, and so they have been removed.
This is insane. I mean, he likes a dictator who brutalizes his own people. I mean, and it's not the first dictator that Donald Trump has affection for, who brutalizes his own people. And so he decides to unilaterally lift sanctions almost immediately after they were implemented. This is insane.
Openly going against, I mean, every recommendation from all sides. And I think, I mean, my mind is like, how can we get to the point where we, like, not we, but like where the North Korean people can be helped, right? You know, obviously not like interventionist or anything, but like, because you know the sanctions don't, you know, who they hurt are the North Korean people, but we don't know how to do diplomacy, you know, like we can't even get there because getting to that point, talking about human rights in North Korea is talking about a stand down of this nuclear tension. And we can't do that if we have, again, this president who's flip-flopping on people like even John Bolton, and like Bolton just wants war. So like I kind of take a lot of what he says with a grain of salt.
Theoretically, he wants war with a non-nuclear armed North Korea at the very least.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, so look, here's the thing. That's why I was being sarcastic throughout that. I mean, look, I don't care what Steve Mnuchin wants. I certainly don't care what John Bolton wants. I'm not advocating for any particular sanctions, but what I'm saying is that if you're gonna have sanctions or you're not gonna have sanctions, this is not how you're supposed to arrive at it. Sanctions being announced is the result of a multi-months long process of experts analyzing the obvious and not so obvious consequences of those sanctions. And for Donald Trump to just be like, nah, I like that guy, so I'm gonna shut it down. That's not how the government's supposed to run.
They're in love.
It's apparently not illegal. These were not passed by Congress or anything like that. He has in the past refused to put into effect legally passed congressional sanctions or requirements that sanctions be established, I should say. In this case, I guess he cannot do it if he wants to, but do you want your country run in this way? This is no different in this particular aspect than any dictator, any tin pot despot operating in any country in the world. That's how those governments run.
My favorite part about the whole Trump North Korea sort of, you know, saga, the soap opera that is that Trump spends so much time on the campaign saying we're losers. America is losers. We look like losers in the eyes of the world. We're idiots. You know, Mexico's beating us, Canada's beating, everyone's beating us. And then he has one opportunity to do something that shows a little bit of backbone. Okay, how does America, your strong America, sort of lead, right? You know, I'm not advocating, again, like not war, but like how do you lead? How do you show that we're strong? Here you have a gold plate opportunity. Obama told you about it. He warned you about it. Everyone, we know it's a sensitive area and it's a difficult needle to thread. And of course, the dude can't do it. The dude is just like, I love you. Yeah, we're best buds. And sanctions, no sanctions. I'm tough. You're an idiot. Like me. Like just like he has gotten it so wrong and made us look like total losers.
Well, in a variety of ways, but it's not just how he's handling North Korea. So you have to take his foreign policy as a whole and consider the fact that the way that he behaves toward one country is influencing the way that North Korea acts. So for instance, North Korea and Kim Jong-un specifically has no real incentive to denuclearize when he knows that the United States has a history of salivating over the notion of regime change. Now at the same time, Donald Trump is pushing for what? Regime change, not in North Korea right now, but he's certainly pushing for a regime change in Venezuela.
Right.
So if you have to think about this as if we're dealing with rational actors, and I know it's a difficult thing to do because we're dealing with Kim Jong-un and Donald Trump, but Kim Jong-un to some extent is a rational actor, and I'm saying this in a international relations, scholarly way, right? In that he's thinking of, okay, what's the cost benefit analysis of denuclearizing? And right now, if you denuclearize, who's to say that the United States at some point in the future won't turn around and try to push for regime change in North Korea?
Right.
So that's what his thinking is, especially given the added evidence of what Trump is trying to do in Venezuela. So these are all things that, I think these conversations are missing in political analysis. I think that this type of analysis is missing in Donald Trump's own mind.
Of course.
And he, remember, refused to even prepare prior to the first summit he had with Kim Jong-un. He was asked by reporters, what have you done to prepare? And he, I'm paraphrasing, essentially said nothing. And he's like, I just know, it's my touch, it's my feel, right? No, we're talking about a dictator.
The feel.
Of cotton. Anyway, so I did have a little tiny sliver of hope when it came to his diplomatic approach, but now he's taken that diplomatic approach and put it on steroids to the point where he's being irresponsible and unilaterally making these decisions that I think are gonna be destructive.
Yeah, and the thing is, hypothetically, he had this new approach. It's gonna be totally personal. I'm gonna charm him.
Yeah.
But the problem is that he is easily flattered. Not everyone is, and so Kim sends him letters. And he's at least temporarily, I mean, sure, he's a frenetic guy, but as of right now, he loves him, give him whatever he wants, but he's not getting anything for that. He is easily won over, and he thinks that everyone else is as shallow and stupid as he is, but they're not necessarily. Like sometimes they want some concessions.
Right.
Kim just got them.
Yeah.
But what have we gotten so far?
That's what I'm saying, he's misplayed it completely, but I will say, given that we're dealing with a toddler, like happy, in love Trump is much better than angry, hateful Trump, right? So we should kind of just be like, you're doing a great job.
I mean, look, this is certainly better than what we had in the very beginning with Trump and Kim Jong-un.
Rocket Man and all that.
There was a real threat of things escalating to the point where people would get hurt. And so I would, I guess, much rather take the scenario that we're in now as opposed to what we had earlier. But still,
knowing that the first strike will most likely not come from North Korea.
Correct.
Yeah.
But even given that, Donald Trump is very hot and cold depending on his mood on any given day, depending on who he's spoken to on any given day. We have no idea what his mood is gonna be tomorrow or next month. And so this nonstop anxiety is just irresponsible. You're supposed to keep the American people safe, and you're doing the exact opposite right now.
Yeah.
Well, when the Mueller report comes down and we know exactly what's in it, or when we know what's in it, maybe that we'll go back to Rocket Man And that'll be the big distraction. And then we just
We'll
ride
see.
that out for 2 years.
Well, we have Venezuela, we have Iran. There's all sorts of
so
distractions.
many wars to get to.
That's true. And not to open up a whole big thing, but the anxiety that you're talking about that I've been feeling, that a lot of people have been feeling, that is the unique Donald Trump effect. There are other Republicans who are warmongers, but this is one of the reasons that the argument that we should only think about impeachment through a strictly partisan lens, who would end up in the office, that's wrong for a lot of different reasons. But the idea that uniformly in every case Mike Pence would be worse is simply not the case. Not only would he be neutered because he'd be coming in after an impeached president, he would have effectively no authority or mandate whatsoever, but he also probably would not be goading a dictator into nuking the West Coast.
Right.
That's my belief. Anyway, we're gonna take our second break. We got a couple different stories we wanna get to in the last block that we have, including Laura Ingraham possibly inspiring violence against a progressive journalist, AOC also facing those sorts of threats, and why does a lawmaker in Maine believe that women don't need tampons? We're gonna break that down after this.